for a lot of companies, in the next couple of years, they're going to have a tough time because a very large chunk of their current revenues will disappear one way or another because patents fall off. In the US, when you lose a patent, within 12 months, you've lost 90% of that revenue. You really need, as a big pharmaceutical company, 2 new molecular entities with NMEs is the abbreviation of 2 new drugs, whether it's a biologic or a small molecule, a year, to sort of drive growth nicely. This red curve here shows the increase in terms of spending of R&D per year. And then you see a very steady, even slightly falling number of drugs approved. So this opens up something that we call the innovation gap. It also opens up something that for a company like CBio is very important. That tells you that the big pharma companies just have to buy in drugs from other sources because what they produce in their own research lab is not going to be sufficient to drive the growth that they need. If we then flip and look a little at what drives utilization of medicines, you have a couple of trends as I see them. One is, of course, the aging of the population. We get older. And as we do as a population, we get sicker. If you believe this, and it happens virtually all over the world, you will also see that certain diseases will grow much more than others because they are diseases of the elderly. Cancers is the typical one. The second trend that I talked about is cost containment. The healthcare in the US costs 16–17% of GDP. It's almost twice as much as any other country as a percentage of GDP. And the growth is frightening because just plot it out and they will spend 100% of their GDP very soon. And you have to look at that and understand how that will affect your new medicines because the cost of bringing a new medicine to the market is in the billions of dollars nowadays. So you have to think it through and make sure that there is a true market, i.e. what is it that will make your payers accept the cost of a new medicine? What this tells you is essentially that you have to have a more significant improvement in your new medicines versus what we used to do. An interesting thing that's been on the horizon for 10, 15 years is personalized medicine. Pick virtually any medicine and give it to 100 patients. A third of them will respond beautifully and really the way the medicine was intended. Second third will have some sort of decent response. Not fantastic, not full out, but okay. Third won't respond at all, but they will of course have the same side effects. It's a very inefficient way of treating patients because this is a trial and error system that we currently have in the vast majority. We actually can't see and predict who will respond ahead of time. And both from a cost efficiency and from a patient perspective, any improvements here, of course, will be fairly dramatic. Fourth trend that's important to see is the regulatory. The regulators, this is the most regulated industry in the world. What we've seen is especially the US Food and Drug Administration, FDA, has, through mostly political pressure, I would say, become very risk averse. Almost 50% of drugs approved in the last couple of years have actually been biologics. So that's changed from 10% 10 years ago. And we've also shown that they are big sellers, especially oncology and inflammation, which are very attractive areas for biologics. where you have a bunch of medicines selling $3, $4, $5, $6 billion a year. Now, if you go into autoimmune disorders, rheumatoid arthritis is the most common and most well-known of a whole family of disease that's called autoimmune disorders. We now have on the market 4 what is called TNF-alpha antagonists that attacks and blocks one of the key inflammatory mediators, tumor necrosis factor, or TNF. That's the biggest change in the treatment of rheumatoid arthritis and some of the other autoimmune diseases in 50 years easily. So that's sort of where I come into C-Bio, because to me, bringing new medicines in for autoimmune disorders, there's still a huge medical need. Extol comes from University of Queensland. It comes from the basic fact that we've known for a long time that when females, remember, a lot of patients here are females, when they become pregnant, a lot of them actually feel much better during pregnancy. And no one has known really what it was. Something to do with hormones going right. But University of Queensland actually isolated the reason for it. Then this has been developed into a fair understanding, not a total understanding, but a fair understanding of what this is. Extol is a slightly modified version of what we have in our own body in this respect. That's what is currently being developed here. Completely different mechanism from anything else that's out there. And of course, potential to use also in patients that do not respond to TNF-alphas or any other of the treatments. History has also taught us that if we get good results in rheumatoid arthritis, chances are high that it will also work in a number of the other autoimmune diseases, like psoriasis, like lupus, possibly multiple sclerosis. It's a slightly different disease, but a possibility. To end on a general point, the science in medicine here in Australia is typically world class. You have a superb science here. It's just not often commercialized fully.